As a man was about to go surfing in the sea, he accidentally stepped into a loose sand slope and fell into it. Unable to react in time due to the steep slope, he desperately clung to the sand with his fingers to stop his descent. However, the soft sand couldn't support his weight and he began to slide down again. In a desperate attempt to stop, he spread his hands and pressed his face against the sand surface, managing to halt his fall once more. At this point, he was extremely tense, and the excruciating pain in his palms made breathing difficult. But just then, his phone rang from his backpack. Initially, the man wanted to ignore the call, knowing that any distraction could be fatal. However, the ringing was incessantly annoying, and thinking it might be his only chance for rescue, he decided to take the risk. Slowly releasing his left hand, he tried to reach into his backpack with one hand. But as soon as he touched the phone, his right hand slipped and he slid down the slope again. At the last moment, as he was about to fall off the cliff, he stretched his legs outwards and wedged his body against the cliff edge, narrowly escaping death again. But the relief was short-lived. The waves crashing against the cliff shook the sand, and with his strength nearly depleted, falling off the cliff seemed inevitable. Fortunately, he was still lucid enough to calculate the frequency of the waves hitting the sand wall. When the next wave came, he let go of his hands and jumped into the turbulent waves behind him. Although the water cushioned his fall, he still hit the rocks below hard, knocking him unconscious. Driven by a strong survival instinct, he quickly regained consciousness. Struggling, he swam to the surface before drowning. To avoid being pulled into deeper waters, he exhaustedly climbed onto a nearby rock. But before he could catch his breath, he felt intense pain in his palms where a large cut had exposed the bones. Still, he preferred this pain to dying at sea. After resting for a while, he tried to stand and look for a way to survive, but found his legs numb, barely able to move his toes. In a moment of crisis, he remembered his phone in the backpack. Frantically, he tore the backpack open with his mouth, only to find the phone completely unusable due to water damage. Realizing that calling for help was futile, he began to shout towards the coast for help. But the vast coastline and the noise of the waves made it impossible for anyone to hear him, forcing him to give up. He then struggled to take off his t-shirt and used it to bandage his wounded left hand. Staring at the endless sea, he still sought a way out. That's when he spotted a small island in the middle of the sea. Thinking there might be a chance of survival there, he immediately put on his backpack and plunged into the sea. Initially, he swam smoothly into the deep sea, but soon paid the price for his rashness. Unable to use his limbs fully and tiring quickly from swimming with one arm, he soon began to suffocate and sank. In a desperate struggle for life, he managed to surface again just before drowning. But before he could take 2 breaths of fresh air, dizziness overtook him. Having exerted himself too much, he lost the strength to struggle, and slowly sank to the bottom of the sea, feeling small and helpless. However, the sea wasn't done with him yet. Shortly after, the turbulent tide brought the man to the shore. Seeing hope so close, his will to live surged again. He quickly threw his backpack and hooked one of its straps onto a rock, then wrapped the other strap around his arm to secure himself next to the rock. As the tide finally receded, he was utterly exhausted from the ordeal. But then a seagull suddenly appeared and bit off a piece of flesh from his wound. The excruciating pain jolted him awake, and in a panic he broke the backpack strap and collapsed onto the beach. Desperately thirsty, the man urgently needed fresh water. He quickly found a can in the sand, but it contained only murky seawater. Then he cried out in pain as his arm was pierced by a fishhook hidden in the sand. With no other option, he shakily removed the hook with his left hand. After that, he collapsed on the beach, bewildered by his wretched state. As night fell, unable to walk, the man had to crawl along the beach like a turtle, searching for food. Fortunately, though the beach was remote, there was plenty of discarded trash. Soon he unearthed a torn fishing net and even found 2 rolls of unused tin foil, indicating that people had been to this beach before, giving him renewed hope for survival. Then he went to the seaside to clean his wounds with salt water, wailing in pain. Afterward, he wrapped himself in tin foil and the fishing net to protect against the cold night wind. At midnight, thunder rumbled, exciting the man as he anticipated drinking fresh rainwater. He quickly dug a small pit and lined it with tin foil to collect the rain. When the thunder grew louder, he opened his mouth to the pouring rain. But to his dismay, despite the loud thunder, only a few drops of rain fell. Grabbing a nearby cup, he found it empty. Disbelieving, he licked the tin foil in the pit, tasting only gritty sand. Barely surviving till dawn, the man lay beside a rock, barely alive. The seagull reappeared, and he devised a plan to kill it with a stick when it came close. But unfortunately, he failed. Unable to catch any living creatures, he continued to crawl on the beach looking for motionless seafood. Surprisingly, the beach, constantly washed by waves, was barren. Just when he was about to die of hunger, he noticed something in the distance. Using his last bit of strength, he crawled to it and found a broken surfboard. Overjoyed, he thought he had found a lifeline. But soon his excitement faded and he pushed the surfboard aside. Nearly paralyzed, he couldn't surf or crawl far. Giving up his last chance, he lay on the beach watching the endless waves, waiting for a rescue that he didn't know when would come. Ironically, even then, fate wasn't done with him. Soon after, the rising tide destroyed his last bit of hope. Seeing no way out, the man used all his strength to grab the skateboard and rush into the sea. His only thought was to die fighting against fate. Facing the towering waves, the man moved tirelessly like an unyielding machine using his numb hands. Perhaps impressed by his willpower, the sea suddenly calmed. But the man, like a deflated ball, reached his limit and soon closed his eyes, slowly sinking to the bottom of the sea. However, when one no longer fears death, they often find rebirth. Suddenly, a fishing boat appeared on the sea surface and rescued the man, who was about to sink to the bottom, thus saving his life. Many years later, the man, fully recovered, stood before the sea again. This time, his eyes no longer held fear, only the determination to conquer the sea, and a reflection of his once timid and cowardly self. Perhaps proving the adage, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.